head of our grad department, Don Glandon, wanted us to record this interview with you and then transcribe it and try to have it published on All About Jazz magazine. Did he tell you about that?
Yeah, I have a general idea.
Okay,
cool. Nothing specific.
Okay. Well, I wrote down a couple things that I was interested in. I guess I'll start with this. In the packet that you gave in the masterclass about automation, that seems to be your whole kind of approach to the guitar. But you also mentioned that you know about how to communicate regular theory that we would learn in school here.
Well, I'm familiar with the language. We'll wait until.
Do you want to put this over here? It's left.
She'll be joining. You'll be joining with the interview.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I didn't get your name. I got everyone else.
I'm sorry. My name is Rieko.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Please make yourself comfortable. Your question again one more time.
What I got from the master class was the automation is your approach to the guitar.
Not necessarily. Automation to me is the quickening of the instrument one of the instruments you intend to use for the benefits that embody your intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever your intentions may be, there are many tools that you'll use to functionally bring these things to pass. Okay? For me, the guitar is one of the instruments. Another instrument is my automobile. I learned that very quickly. A good example. That was automated. Once I learned how to put the key in the lock, open the front door, I no longer had to practice doing that. It was automated. I went right to the car, put the key in the lock, opened the door, went inside. The rest of the functions of that particular vehicle, that machine, I learned one by one, but the moment I saw exactly how it worked, I didn't have to practice it. I knew how it functioned, and I got better and better at it. But generally speaking, just to operate the machine, the vehicle, once I saw that, it became an automated functions. Every time I went to it, it served its purpose. And it no longer was distracting my attention. For instance, right now, I came over here in my automobile. I don't even think about my automobile. You're a guitarist. The majority of your thoughts, especially when you're in school, is the guitar. And because of that, you're losing sight of some of the most valuable moments there are. And that is, you may come into a moment where you're in the same vicinity, the same place as the cleaning lady who happens to be standing near the elevator, who's in a bad state of mind, and you're in a good state of mind. But you're thinking about the guitar, the instrument, so much that you're of no use to that moment. You understand the opportunity that was just lost in the sense of enjoying the moment together, being of assistance, and not seeing any value in any of the other things that, like the guitar. The guitar to me is just like that piece of paper. If I need it, I'll use it to write on it. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I respect the instrument, but it's a vehicle, it's a tool. And that isn't the mystic, the magic. That isn't the real value of the blessing that was given by it being placed in my hands. It's brought me all over the world. It's placed me in positions. I was a dropout from high school in 10th grade. I never graduated high school, but I have had several offices at UCLA, at MI, at different places, and there's an irony to that. There's an irony to that. To transcend the systematic, the game, the social game that so many of us are subject to. So that's automation, to answer your question. Automation is to release the complexity of these instruments and now to put them at service to you. Like anything in your house, they're there, all these things, you value every one of these things you have in your house. The dishes, the washcloths, everything in your house you value. But you don't practice them. It's so second nature to you that you can enjoy how they're of service to you. Now your house contains a new instrument. If it's any more valuable than any of the others that are of service to you, there is a problem. It's distracting your attention. That should be second nature to you, just like all the others. And if you can get it there, then you can begin to consider being a master and moving into areas of its use where you can consciously manipulate for your own good, for your own success. Is that clear to you?
Yeah.
That's automation.
That's great. That's exactly what I was wondering about that term.
To reduce the complexities of the facility of the instrument, the scales, the harmonies, the sequential, the essence of all the different cultural applications, idiomatic as well, whether it's classical, whether it's jazz. If you're a jazz musician, a good example, you're practicing that one thing, that one idiom, you're no longer open to so many beauties in the garden. You're only focused on one flower. And the more you're there, and as you become more and more familiar with it, what initially was, again, consonance and dissonance come up. Consonance is in my opinion, consonance is the ability to experience what's pleasing. Dissonance is the feeling of what is the opposite of pleasing, what is tense and dissonant. You see? So now, here I am looking at the flower. I look at it so long that I get tired of looking at it. So now, what was consonant is now becoming dissonant to me. And therefore, I see dissonance and consonant as the same thing, the same process. And the more I'm exposed to what's dissonant, the more consonant it becomes. I remember when I first heard Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. That was very dissonant to me the first time I heard Stockhausen. The more I was exposed to that socially with other individuals, other people who enjoyed Karl-Heinz's work, the more consonant it became through the enjoyment of each other and how it fit, how the music fit that mutual enjoyment. So what was dissonant then became more and more consonant. So that's my study of music. My study of music is the human condition. And playing guitar is so second nature to me since childhood. It was always my favorite toy. So I never thought about having to master it on the basis of proving my ability in terms of a technical position in the music industry. I always wanted to enjoy like I did as a child. I remember a time when my mom and dad, literally one or the other would come and say, "Stop playing and do your homework." So there you go again. I was more interested in playing, and I still am.
In your packet, the nature of the guitar.
Yeah.
And there's like a systematic way of looking at augmented chords and diminished chords, and all the permutations, I guess, of moving the notes in those chords.
That's an application.
Right, so it's an application
of a greater system.
Right. So what I'm wondering is, do you tie that in like when you look at a chart and you see chord symbols, I guess I'm wondering the bridge between the traditional theory and then the guitar, nature of the guitar theory, I guess if you want to call it that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a very valid question. The the normal condition with regards to curriculum, okay, though that particular approach is solely on the basis of the instrument and how it's going to function within a larger instrument. The larger instrument, of course, is what's referred to as music. And the instrument that you have chosen as an instrumentalist, how it functions as an instrument within that. The nature of the guitar as a text, and of course these are just scratches, little excerpts from it. It's over 500 pages long in 3 volumes. This particular text, although it can be applied and can be seen as the guitar, and rightfully so, because I've found out through the instrument, it's more on a much vaster, a much larger way of perception, a different form of perception. In other words, as I explained to you, one of the triggers that caused this to be of interest to me was when I looked at my wristwatch for the first time and I saw music in what it was reading off. I saw for the first time the cosmic circle. And what I was taught on a horizontal, 2-dimensional basis of the tones in a chromatic scale on a staff, they suddenly became replications of what was on my wrist in my watch. When I saw the cosmic circle and I saw 12 o'clock as the root, I then saw in minor seconds a chromatic scale of numbers. See? And when I saw that, I then began to think about intervals. And I noticed that what I had learned at a very early age, north, east, south, and west, was the minor third interval in the scale. Because anytime I would unravel it and put the chromatic scale down horizontal again, the same things that I saw as north, east, south, and west would be those tones of the scale. The only difference on the watch, the tones were called numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 12. Whereas on the horizontal scale, the numbers now were C, C sharp, D, E flat, E natural, F, F sharp, G. But they were the same as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right to 12. That's where the cell door opened, and I was no longer imprisoned in music. And at a very early age, I noticed something about the augmented triad. And I noticed that not from musicians or a music teacher. I noticed that from my parents and their walk in life. Both my parents, when I was a child, worked in what was known in slang as a sweatshop. And that was an industrial factory where people designed jackets and sewed, pressed the lapels, the slacks, okay? And I noticed that they went to work at 9 o'clock and they worked till 5. And then I looked on the circle that I was now really hypnotized by on the watch, and I noticed, wow, from 9 to 5, let me see what does that look like in tones? I took the interval, the augmented interval, 12, 4, and 8. That's C, E, A flat. Okay, in a chromatic scale. And I joined the equilateral points. Okay? And there was the triangle, which you see in that circle, given today. And then I moved it one notch. In other words, I transposed it one key. And then it turned into 9 was A, okay? 1 was C sharp, and 5 was F. The next augmented triad. They went to work at 9 o'clock, they worked till 12, took 1 hour off for lunch, came back at 1 and worked till 5. So here's the industrial systematic organization of a work day, of a 12-hour day, for the masses, industrially, to work on the basis of major seconds. Actually, yeah, the major third, the augmented triad.
Mm-hmm.
That to me meant something significant.
That's
Not only was it automatic for me on the instrument, already giving me all the major and minor triads everywhere, but at the same time it told me something about the architecture of an industrial society and how
Wow.
to function in the midst of it with grace.
That's an interesting correlation.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
You studied and you learned at a very early age north, east, south, and west. And you also studied and learned the 4 seasons at a very early age. And you already knew these things, and now you wanted to learn music, but you were totally in fog. You didn't know anything about, so you went to parents, or you did it yourself, and you paid an instructor to teach you what you already knew. It's the minor third interval. That's what that's all about. So it's not really about music. It's not about guitar. It's about the nature of it. How many things it embodies. See, that transcends the music. And the music becomes so secondary and so simplistic because of a broader perspective and the ability to see music in all things that surround you. The streets, the names of the streets, the geography of the systems in play, that you no longer see any disconnection in the music. When you leave, in other words, when you leave the school, do you have to go to a concert to be able to refresh yourself with music? Or to a club to refresh yourself with people that you can be in relationship to? Musicians, only musicians, maybe even only guitar players. Look at the alienation, or only violinists, or only the Academy of Music, or the Kimmel Center, classically, or jazz-wise, only this or that. Look how many different departure points or separations there are when the music is in everything. And that's the nature of the instruments. To see repetition of the same thing in many shapes and forms.
That's really awesome. It's not good to say about it.
Well, it's exciting. I think it's what you really are falling in love with. And that's what your instrument contains.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Maybe this is not really smart question, but when you think like that, then how does it affect to your sound, like nature?
Your sound.
Your sound, like more. If you think about tones as a number or clock, or more music is really connected to nature, then that affects to your sound itself, or your sound is still,
I think there are a number of things to take place. With regards to specific variables in sound itself, that's a science in itself, and I would advise you to study through math certain frequencies and other variants, where A440 and all of the variables are taking place. But I would say this, a good example would be your transcription in a school like this, a transcription of a solo. When you transcribe a solo, and when we do that, and we're under the impression that we know more about the player and more about what was chosen in that solo, which has a great deal to do with sound as well. Here we have our conclusion as to what it really is. And it may seem exactly correct. It may seem exactly correct. What we've lost sight of is that it's very possible that that particular artist, that particular individual, was under circumstance during that particular recording that you're transcribing at that time, well, let's say the condition of the instrument that he or she was using was not good. The temperature in the studio was poor. The engineer and that particular individual were not in sync, and there was some kind of social or emotional static between them. Therefore, there was anger between them. And therefore, what that person played was bah! Because that person couldn't say, hey, look. And you've transcribed it on the basis of what you think was played musically. But the person is so gifted as an artist that he or she doesn't even think about the music. They use their instrument to express what would never be accepted as word. And they have the freedom to do so, to embellish. So in terms of sound, I think these things have a great deal to do with it as well. The authenticity of what is being played, in most cases, really transcends the facility that the player has. And is closer to what the person feels about life. I mean, dedication to that instrument for me personally is the biggest distraction from life itself. And the sooner I can get it to be automatic and out of the way, the sooner I can begin to see the beauty of everything around me. That's what Train was talking about, a love supreme. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've done a thesis topic on music as a language.
As loud as you can, so we can.
Doing music as a language.
Yeah.
And just want to know your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, give me a specific. I mean, that's such a.
What I done was I took a lingual comparison to music, and I tried to compare it the best that I could to prove that it is a language in itself that can be learned. And also, I took another approach of comparing it to conversation, like improvisation as conversation,
Sure.
when you're in a setting with other musicians. And I just wondering if you've thought much about that.
Well, what I just briefly described had a great deal to do with dynamics.
Yeah.
And at the same time, in addition to what I've already described in terms of attack, I described that as a projection of anger, which would be fortissimo, okay, at that moment. Bang! It's like out of your system. Or it could be done with vibrato in certain levels of sustenance, And that is not anger. That's a different emotion that can be felt that way. So these are dynamics. In the sense of mechanical use of opportunities like that, I've also found it very interesting to take alphabets compositionally and place them in a straight line from A to Z, the English language. And I guess you can do this with kanji as well. Yeah, you can do this with kanji. So I've taken like the from A to Z, 26 letters. And if you took a C major scale or any major scale, diatonic scale, you have 7 notes. So that would be 7, 7, 7, 5. We give you the full 26 appropriate replications of those positions on the alphabet. So let's say I take an A minor scale, and I place those scales, 7-note scales, under the alphabet. I'd have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, okay? Under A, B, C, D, E, F, G. From H, under that, I would have A, B, C, D, E, F, G to the next set. And the alphabet continues, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. And then O, P, and all the others under the division of those into 4 places. 3 groups of 7, all the A minor scale, and then A to the 5th under the last 5 letters of the alphabet. Now I have all the words that can be spelled in the language now relate to the tones that are now under the alphabet. So, good example, COL in the A minor scale, do-da-dee is CAG in the A minor scale and the relative minor scale. And then TRANE, Coltrane, train, TRANE, is do-do-dee-da. There's a melody to those notes, to those letters. So now suddenly words that you say to me are turning into melodies because I'm exploring a different translation. So in the sense of language and music, there are many different ways of applications. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with a relative minor scale. It could be with any one of over 500 global forms. It could be one of the 10-note scales from Israel. It could be one of the ragas from India. It could be many things. It could be a pentatonic scale from Japan. You know, nori. It could be gakko. Some of the different scales. So it depends what you do with these. You know, they fit. They fit like a glove. They're just beautiful mirror images. So I find confinement, being a musician, I find that confining, very confining. I see a human being much more vast in context. And I think the greatest thing as a human being is to seek enlightenment and consciousness. Music is one of the greatest things that can lead you toward that achievement. It will sensitize you. And the more sensitive you become, the more difficult it is to translate and enjoy your position within the midst of insensitivity, which is your surroundings, social surroundings. And that's where competition feeds and ignites all of the problems that you're going to confront and have to find solutions to. And that will make you stronger and stronger in the process. And the faster you get these things neutral and just the same way you use a pencil or a pen, the faster you'll be successful in functioning in a really, in my opinion, a practical way. You know, it's not to be too tied up in the pen, but to be more concerned as to how to be of service with it. Does that answer your question? To
Yes.
You know, music as in terms of communication.
It does. Yeah, a different aspect of it, but yeah.
You know?
That.
Are there any other details that you're specifically concerned about?
I was also thinking of the acquisition of vocabulary.
Vocabulary in what context?
As far as the jazz vocabulary. And I also was making that comparison along with lingual acquisition of vocabulary through the uses of like transcription. And also, I had talked about musicians, how when they first start, how when they listen to other people, they grasp onto small phrases just like a child does,
Yeah.
with 1, 2 word kind of words. And that was the side I was talking more of, but what you were talking about is a whole nother way of seeing it that I didn't really think of.
In addition to.
yeah, in addition to. And so I guess to kind of pull that all together, do you think that it's possible to make a course that can use that application to help young improvisers?
I would think so, but I don't think that it would be specifically a course in music. I think there are social implications, there are psychological implications, there are quite a number of things. You know, let's take a look at the child who learned the two things that he or she was exposed to. What about the environment itself that this took place in? So it's a study of what? The environment that it took place in, the people that projected what the child responded to, or all of this put together as one from an objective different distance. I mean, there are many facets of that transcend any profession. It's one of the reasons why one of the comments I made was, I don't see musicianship to be of any importance, anything more important, to be honest with you, than a cab driver, a plumber, a president, a lawyer, a doctor, a grade school teacher. And this is all the same thing. It's what you do for a living, you know. And it has no meaning of itself. It just brings you into different realities with different opportunities. And you are brought into it, and then how you act to it and how you read what is of value in it. And if you get involved in the vehicle itself, the car or music as a vehicle, then you lose sight of all the things that it drove past while you were looking at the meter. You missed all of this, the view on the sides that you're blind to until you escape and you can open the doors and leave that confinement. But that can only be done when it's in motion at, the snap of a finger. It's got to be second nature to you. And that's what I think graduates are. Achieving that ability technically. And then you're down to what do you want to do with it, the power of it. You know. Well, first and foremost is to see how many things you can see it in. And the more you can see it in, the more comfortable you are in the presence of that many other things. Until you can see it in everything, and when you see it in everything, then you're comfortable under any conditions. And that's success.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your heroes as far as the guitar, and if you transcribed, or if, from what I'm getting from your philosophy, I'm guessing that you probably just listen and grab things from what you hear as a vibe type of thing.
Very much.
But
correct.
Do you see a lot of value in transcription and analysis? And who are some of the people that really influence your style?
Well, I think generation, age, has a great deal to do with it. I'm in my 60s, and the way it was at your age for me, transcription had nothing to do with analysis and the evaluation of what was heard and the ability to write it out. Transcription to me in my generation was learning it off a record, sitting down next to it and playing it along with it as many times as you possibly could until you learned it, until it became absorbed. I did that with a few guitarists, in the earlier years, until I got tired of doing it that way. And then I got that from tenor players that I began to play with when I went to New York. And I learned a lot of things that way. I don't know what to say about it. I'm just as alienated to where you are at in your generation compared to where I was at as you are in mine. The culture was different than it is now. A good example, I have no idea what in the world you would be able to do nowadays with jazz alone. I remember a time when jazz by itself was one of the biggest things in Philadelphia. You had the biggest clubs here, You had the Showboat, Broad and Lombard, and Pep's, Broad and South, right on Broad Street. At Showboat was Miles Davis. 1 week. The same week at Pep's was the Montgomery Brothers. Next week, John Coltrane was at Pep's and Charles Mingus was at the Showboat. You know, that's what was happening in those days. So I was exposed to that. So much so that when I went to hear, like you go to Chris maybe, and you hear a group that comes in and you sit in, or you get to know them again and again and again and again. And you become part of the interaction with these people, and then you get a chance to possibly go to a sound check, and you happen to have your instrument with you, and somebody says, hey, let me hear you play. And you pick up the instrument and you say, whoa, I didn't know you could play that good. Here's my number. And suddenly you're in the band. That's how it used to be in my generation. Now I don't know how that works. I don't know how that is. Even if it exists or anymore. I don't know if that does. But there are things that exist now that did not exist then. So I'm just as much in awe of your opportunities as you may have been and what you consider achieved by me. We sit in the same place now and here and now. So that's the only thing that's real. So I think these are very valuable issues that I think have a great deal to do with what you've accomplished here as graduates. You've graduated something that has no meaning of itself. It has no meaning of itself. You graduated playing an instrument. What does that mean? Could you answer that?
To the standards of the university we passed.
Pardon me?
The standards presented by the university we passed.
Yeah. And after graduation, when you hit the front door and you walk out, what do you expect will take place? Can you come up to a derivative of that dilemma that will be valuable, that will solve that dilemma, and at least give you something concrete that you know you can trust? I can give you that. No matter what you find yourself in the midst of, whether it's musicians, whether it's the cleaning woman, whether it's a homeless, whether it's a person dressed too fantastically with a label that says, I am rich, or one who looks like saying, I am poor. No matter what you see or where you are, there's one thing that you can do that will fulfill you. That's doing the best you can do under any circumstances. Once you do that, consciously do that, no matter what is the result on behalf of others and their critique, you're already fulfilled. You did the best you could do, and that's good enough for you. And you can't blame them, because that's participation in sensitivity on your behalf, which is the very thing that you wish they will never do to you. So you're in the midst of a decision, you know, and I think that that's a very simple thing. And now it comes down to why you're doing your intentions with the instrument that is you're gifted with. I think the greatest supplement is the ecstasy of your relationship with your instrument. That's something you can do privately with the help of no one else. Don't lose that. Don't lose that. That will feed you. That will supplement your needs when the world around you fails to do so. And that will keep you doing the very thing that you enjoyed when you were a child. So I think it's as simple as that. But you also have to have faith and trust in that. But again, remember what I said, to do the best you can. To be able to cope with disappointment and do so with grace is an art in itself. And if you could do the best at that, then you don't have to worry so much about disappointments. Those who fall apart from a disappointment have to worry about the next time it happens. Once you learn from the last time, trial and error, and you learn that you did the best you could do, and they don't understand, well, maybe they'll understand the next time, okay. But I enjoyed the opportunity because I was fulfilled from myself, from inside, as a player as well. And see, this is chorus to chorus, in your solo. Right? So it's not only the philosophy. It's far beyond that. I mean, philosophy is just as no value as musicianship has no value in itself. It's what do you want to do with the power, So I think these are decisions on your behalf, how you want to deal with it. Any other questions? Let's go on.
You guys have any other questions?
I hope this isn't disappointing with regards to music being a specific formula. You know how education itself and its curriculum are specific formulas. This is very abstract compared to that. This is very abstract compared to that. So I hope you see an embellishment of all of those things in this as well, because it's going to enhance that. It's going to make it stronger, your musicianship, your artistry. That's the difference. A musician is a craftsman. A sensitive human being is an artist. There are two different entities, two different stages of enlightenment. One is based upon functional ability. The other is based upon awareness and incorporates the ability as well. So I think you should follow some of these suggestions and ponder over these things, because I think they're already happening to you anyway. I'm sure all of these things have been happening to you and will continue to. And the best I can do is to say, well, look, this is how I deal with it. And it's been successful for me. My manager right now is in Germany. He's in Frankfurt. Him and his wife. They've been stuck because of the ashes coming from Iceland in the air. He called me, and in his voice was all of this distraction, all of this confrontation of, wow, you have no idea what we're going through over here. You can't believe it. I said, Joe, how's Kathy doing? That's his wife. How's Kathy doing? Oh, he said, she's okay. We're both going through it. I said, hey, look, man, no big thing. Listen, if you're having any problem with finance, put it on my card, Katai Music, because your management. Put it on the business card. Write it off for taxes. You and Kathy, why don't you think about having a honeymoon since you're there?
Make something good out of it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What's the problem, man? What's the problem? Just do the best you can under any circumstance, and take it as that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Enjoy it, and then come back. Refreshed. It'll be in time. So, anything else? What else? What haven't we touched that would be practically?
I was kind of wondering about your working band at this point.
Yeah.
And just maybe the material you're playing, and your approach to putting concerts together, maybe. Do you play all your own original material, or do you let the other guys in the band? Do you take some of their stuff in, or how does that work?
It depends upon the personnel.
Mm-hmm.
It depends upon the personnel. It depends upon their personalities. I'll give you an example. In 1976, I was with Warner Brothers at that time, and I was auditioning players for an upcoming tour that Warner. In those days, there was a budget. The record company had a budget for touring. They don't do that anymore. But in those days, they had a budget, and touring was in syncopation with the availability of a whole series of points where distribution was in link with. So they had markets that were not only the performance, but then you would go to Goodies, Sam Goodies at that time, the record stores, and you would go there and sign albums. And they would set up this whole promo, all the radio stations for the leader of the band. And as far as the band was concerned, that's up to the leader. Now here's the leader who says, okay, yeah, I'll take that tour, but you don't have the band yet. Now you have to audition players. Okay, in come player after player from Berkeley, from Eastman School of Music, from all these different schools that are coming in. I did 2 weeks of rehearsals in New York City at that time, auditions, and still didn't have a band. It wasn't working out. And I always write for the members of the band and the projected nature of what they're good at. We'll take a couple of tunes and we'll play those tunes, and it'll give me more information on the players. And then when I know the players more, I'll begin to write for what I hear in them. And suddenly, right before the 2 weeks were up, I would say in the final 3 or 4 days, in came 3 people from Berkeley School of Music as a trio. They had just graduated Berkeley. Bam, they came in together, and suddenly I was listening to their music. And that's what brought about a fusion group called Joyous Lake for me. Suddenly, the 2 songs that I gave as examples, they reacted to, and I started listening to what they played. They said, well, check this out. And they played one of their originals, and suddenly there was a lot of excitement. That became the next band for the next tour. Warner Brothers backed it up, and we worked. We worked for 2 years, toured globally for 2 years. So that's one of the facets of it. Again, now currently, the players in the band are not projecting originals so much, primarily because the idiom that is most general in context is a facet of rhythm and blues. It's an organ trio, something that I used to do in the 60s. It's like a cycle, and which is a very interesting thing to bring to your attention. Along the lines of the circle, the cosmic circle, and the geographic or the geometric intervals. I've noticed that, for instance, organ trios. The 60s is when I started playing with organ trios at the beginning. And I played with Jimmy Smith and Jack McDuff, Richard Groove Holmes and Shirley Scott, and all the great organ players. And then I got so tired of that I wanted to be like a horn player. I was tired that every time the organist, the leader of the band, had to play a solo, I had to comp. That was my responsibility, and I hated having to comp. Piano players, why don't you get a piano player? I would say to you. I'm like a horn player. I'm more interested in lines. I don't like chords. I don't want to play chords. No, you got to do that. Okay. 1968, I stopped organ trios. So actually, 1967, the end of '67, and I started using nothing but rhythm sections. As a leader, I put a band together just to get away from that. Here we are, in 1968 I did an album called Baina, which was the use of Indian raga and tala systems in exotic rhythms and tala systems, 13/8, 16/4, 11/8, odd tempos and time signatures. I did that one album, and I never toured on the basis of that instrumentation. But then in 1999, approximately 11 years ago, I received a phone call from a gentleman and did another album with a similar arrangement of instrumentation. That to me felt and appeared to be a cycle came back around. Likewise, a couple of years ago, the same thing happened with the organ trio. The cycle came back around, and now it's an organ trio again. And again, the cycle will come around. It'll be a rhythm section with the general rhythm section with a pianist, bassist, and a drummer, percussionist. And so I've moved backward and objectively viewed this over a much vaster, a much greater distance. And I've seen in my life this like cyclic series of events that repeats itself when least expected, and it forces me to keep an open mind and not be confined to one of these different idioms or one of these ensembles, one of these instrumentations. So I never know what's going to come next. For a while it was big band, you know, and that's we were talking about that at this particular point. So that changes itself too. So I don't see things like this, one after another. I see things like that from a distance, and I see them in a cycle, moving in a cycle.
Right now, is it true that you have Tony Monaco on organ?
Tony Monaco and from New York, Jason Brown.
Jason Brown.
And a lot of times I have Eric Alexander as a guest artist.
Are these players people that you play with and that are in your band? Is it just at random how they? You talked a little bit about it already, but are they people you've had a relationship with for a long time, or new people that you hear of from hearsay? It can be any of those things, right?
No, management, my manager.
Okay. So how did, can you speak a little bit about those two players and how you have how did you come about with the relationship with them?
Harvey Mason, drummer, called me for a performance in Japan. This is about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Actually, it wasn't Japan. It was Japan, but it was also Taiwan. Taiwan also. And it was Harvey Mason. It was his group, and I came in as a guest artist. It was Harvey Mason, Tony Monaco, and me. I met Tony Monaco under those conditions with Harvey. Tony and I had so much rapport that I said, yeah, man, that felt great. He said, we got to do this more. So when the time came for a change, I said, I need a drummer. I've got somebody, an organist, and we'd like to do something with a trio. And that's what we did. So it came about like that. For instance, now I've got a date coming up in Japan at the Blue Note. And I was at Cotton Club in Tokyo 6 or 7 months ago. And I need a difference, a change. Not only the organ trio, I need a variation of it. So I recently did a session in LA with Lee Ritenour, 2 guitars. Actually, it was a various number of guitar players on the session. It was myself, it was Lee Ritenour, B.B. King was on it, George Benson's on it, a whole bunch of guitar players right down the line. So I said to my manager, he said, we need a change. And we can't use Eric. They would love it if Eric came in. But Eric's going to be in Tokyo in May, and we're going in October. You can't do that because they don't want to see the same artist twice in a year. So I can't use him. So I said, well, what about Lee Rittenauer? How about 2 guitars in the organ group? So he's looking into that right now, and Lee is checking out his itinerary. So that's how things come about. The availability of players, the nature of promoters for these engagements. I'm with Ted Kurland in Boston as a booking agent. So you need personal management to lead a band. You need personal management. You need a booking agent. You need promotion. I'm with DL Media here in this area, who handles a lot of different record labels. So there are many. And most of all, it has very little to do with musicianship. That comes first. And then you're left with, what do you want to do with that power? Of course, those who are interested in what you would like to do with it want to profit from that. Therefore, you have a record company that will sign you for a recording, but you're going to have to sell records because that's their profit. You're going to have booking agents who are going to be enhanced with regards to respect from the establishments that they're already affiliated with, for them to put you on their roster. You need a manager that it really stands up for and believes in you because you dazzled him when he saw you for the first time. And you continue to do so ever since then. Look how many things that have nothing to do with modes, intervals, scales, changes. These have nothing, it has nothing to do with that. So I would advise to begin to organize your ecstasy, which is what you play and the way you play, and the instrument you use to experience that, and then begin to protect it. You have to make a decision as to how far you want to go and how far you want to get involved with the industry. You know, there's an old saying for that. There's an old word for that: sell out. If you want to do that, and you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. There is no good. There is no bad. It depends upon your own intentions and your success in achieving what you set out to achieve. If you see enjoyment in doing so, do so. You know, I can't advise accordingly. I can only advise accordingly. So, but it's a decision on your own part in terms of how you enjoy living. That's what it really comes down to, the enjoyment of life. The profession itself is just one of the facets of implications, one of its implications.
One. Well, first, I've spoke to Tony Monaco before,
No,
and he's talking about you. And
you know, Tony just had a major operation.
Yeah, is it?
No, it's his leg.
Okay. And he was talking about what a joy it was, and your way of seeing life.
It's a pleasure.
When I saw him, he was playing with Robert Kraut.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. But my question is, what do you feel, or how do you feel about the way more the modern players are approaching the guitar now? Maybe your opinions on people like Alan Holdsworth,
sure,
or maybe Jonathan Kreisberg, now
sure.
Kurt Rosenwinkel, all those kind of people.
Kurt, great player. I mean, what am I supposed to say? I mean, they're spectacular players, you know. And again, there's nothing I could say other than my own enjoyment. I really enjoy them as players. But what they're expressing is the environment that has continuity. It's what they're experiencing. It's the people they're with. It's how they're living, how they're communicating. So I mean, there's not much I can say about that with regards to any kind of comparison. That's the first thing we all have to stop doing. There is no reality and no precision in the word comparison. There's nothing that should be or can be compared with anything else. It is what it is. It is what it is. It makes no difference whether I like or I don't like something. You know.
Right.
And the same goes for everyone here. So that's difficult. That's a difficult thing to give you answers to my feelings about it. It depends on the moment. It depends upon how I hear it and where I hear it.